wonderful growth of the beanstalk. So Jack called his mother, and they both gazed in silent wonder at the beanstalk, which was not only of great height, but was thick enough to bear Jack's weight. "I wonder where it ends," said Jack to his mother. "I think I will climb up and see." His mother wished him not to venture up this strange ladder, but Jack coaxed her to give her consent to the attempt, for he was certain there must be something wonderful in the beanstalk. So at last she yielded to his wishes. Jack instantly began to climb, and went up and up on the ladder-like beam, till everything he had left behind him, the cottage, the village, and even the tall church tower, looked quite little, and still he could not see the top of the beanstalk. Jack felt a little tired, and thought for a moment that he would go back again. But he was a very persevering boy, and he knew that the way to succeed in anything is not to give up. So after resting for a moment, he went on. After climbing higher and higher, till he grew afraid to look down for fear he should be giddy, Jack at last reached the top of the beanstalk, and found himself in a beautiful country, finely wooded, with beautiful meadows covered with sheep. A crystal stream ran through the pastures. Not far from the place where he had got off the beanstalk stood a fine, strong castle. Jack wondered very much that he had never heard of or seen this castle before. But when he reflected on the subject, he saw that it was as much separated from the village by the perpendicular rock on which it stood as if it were in another land. While Jack was standing looking at the castle, a very strange-looking woman came out of the wood and advanced toward him. She wore a pointed cap of quilted red satin turned up with ermine. Her hair streamed loose over her shoulders, and she walked with a staff. Jack took off his cap and made her a bow. "If you please, ma'am," said he, "is this your house?"
"No," said the old lady. "Listen, and I will tell you the story of that castle. Once upon a time there was a noble knight who lived in this castle, which is on the borders of fairyland. He had a fair and beloved wife, and several lovely children. And as his neighbors, the little people, were very friendly towards him, they bestowed on him many excellent and precious gifts. Rumor whispered of these treasures, and a monstrous giant who lived at no great distance, and who was a very wicked being, resolved to obtain possession of them. So he bribed a false servant to let him inside the castle when the knight was in bed and asleep, and he killed him as he lay. Then he went to the part of the castle which was the nursery, and also killed all the poor little ones he found there. Happily for her, the lady was not to be found. She had gone with her infant son, who was only 2 or 3 months old, to visit her old nurse, who lived in the valley, and she had been detained all night there by a storm. The next morning, as soon as it was light, one of the servants at the castle, who had managed to escape, came to tell the poor lady of the sad fate of her husband and her pretty babes. She could scarcely believe him at first, and was eager at once to go back and share the fate of her dear ones. But the old nurse, with many tears, besought her to remember that she had still a child, and that it was her duty to preserve her life for the sake of the poor innocent. The lady yielded to this reasoning, and consented to remain at her nurse's house as the best place of concealment. For the servant told her that the giant had vowed, if he could find her, that he would kill both her and her baby. Years rolled on. The old nurse died, leaving her cottage and the few articles of furniture it contained to her poor lady, who dwelt in it, working as a peasant for her daily bread. Her spinning-wheel and the milk of a cow which she had purchased with the little money she had with her, sufficed for the scanty subsistence of herself and her little son. There was a nice little garden attached to the cottage, in which they cultivated peas, beans, and cabbages, and the lady was not ashamed to go out at harvest time and glean in the fields to supply her little son's wants. Jack, that poor lady is your mother. This castle was once your father's, and must again be yours."
Jack uttered a cry of surprise. "My mother? Oh, madam, what ought I to do? My poor father, my dear mother!"
"Your duty requires you to win it back for your mother. But the task is a very difficult one, and full of peril, Jack. Have you courage to undertake it?"
"I fear nothing when I am doing right," said Jack.
"Then," said the lady in the red cap, "you are one of those who slay giants. You must get into the castle, and, if possible, possess yourself of a hen that lays golden eggs, and a harp that talks. Remember, all the giant possesses is really yours."
As she ceased speaking, the lady of the red hat suddenly disappeared, and of course Jack knew she was a fairy. Jack determined at once to attempt the adventure, so he advanced and blew the horn which hung at the castle portal. The door was opened in a minute or two by a frightful giantess, with one great eye in the middle of her forehead. As soon as Jack saw her, he turned to run away, but she caught him and dragged him into the castle.
"Ho, ho, ho, ho!" she laughed terribly. "You didn't expect to see me here, that is clear. No, I shan't let you go again. I am weary of my life. I am so overworked, and I don't see why I should not have a page as well as other ladies. And you shall be my boy. You shall clean the knives and black the boots and make the fires, and help me generally when the giant is out. When he is at home I must hide you, for he has eaten up all my pages hitherto, and you would be a dainty morsel, my little lad." While she spoke, she dragged Jack right into the castle. The poor boy was very much frightened, as I'm sure you and I would have been in his place. But he remembered that fear disgraces a man, so he struggled to be brave and make the best of things. "I'm quite ready to help you, and do all I can to serve you, madam," he said. "Only I beg you will be good enough to hide me from your husband, for I should not like to be eaten at all." "That's a good boy," said the giantess, nodding her head. "It is lucky for you that you did not scream out when you saw me, as the other boys who have been here did. For if you had done so, my husband would have awakened and have eaten you, as he did them, for breakfast. Come here, child. Go into my wardrobe. He never ventures to open that. You will be safe there." And she opened a huge wardrobe which stood in the great hall, and shut him into it. But the keyhole was so large that it admitted plenty of air, and he could see everything that took place through it. By and by he heard a heavy tramp on the stairs, like the lumbering along of a great cannon. And then a voice like thunder cried out, "Fee, fa, fi, fo, fum! I smell the breath of an Englishman. Let him be alive or let him be dead. I'll grind his bones to make my bread." "Wife," cried the giant, "there is a man in the castle. Let me have him for breakfast." "You are grown old and stupid," cried the lady in her loud tones. "It is only a nice fresh steak off an elephant that I have cooked for you, which you smell. There, sit down and make a good breakfast." And she placed a huge dish before him of savory steaming meat, which greatly pleased him and made him forget his idea of an Englishman being in the castle. When he had breakfasted, he went out for a walk,
And then the giantess opened the door and made Jack come out to help her. He helped her all day. She fed him well, and when evening came, put him back in the wardrobe.